Grifter's Bible, a novel by El Shabooms, read by El Shabooms, with sound design by Monumental Sonic Architecture. Chapter 19, Under a Big Top of Starlight. I was just standing around. The beast was dead. It had closed its eyes and faded away along with the residual effects of the Holy Presence burst suite. There was nothing to do. I dawdled back by the stacked pews while the flock floated back down from off their trip. Then something happened towards the end of the service when Billy Goat went to unlock the front door, preparing to let the congregation spill out onto the patio. I watched our 20 collection buckets make their way towards the back of the crowd. The sheep were lobbing wads in. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a hint of a commotion. I looked over and Billy Goat was barring the door from opening with his foot. He was pushing someone just out of arm's reach. I went to check it out.
Back it up, partner. I don't want to have to knock you back into creation.
Billy Goat reared up. I heard a manic voice behind the door.
Sweet news sounds at his revival.
I could barely register what the voice was saying. The noise in the sanctuary was still on par with a football stadium. I made eye contact with Billy Goat. "What's going on?" I mouthed. Billy Goat rolled his eyes, a little annoyed, like he had gum on his shoe.
Kid's trying to get in, but I told him the show's over.
It had to be Joey Abraham. I came around the door and looked. It was not Joey. The newcomer was clean cut, early 30s, half a Lee Harvey with Jim Garrison glasses. Yellow was fat and square as death. It wasn't anyone I remembered seeing around the church before. His cheeks were flushed and blotchy. He peeked under Billy Goat's barring arm and saw me looking back at him. We made eye contact. We squinted. His eyes lit up and he straightened out, his face filled with blood until I thought he might pop. Then he did. The stiff jabbed a finger at me and declared,
"The brass calf! Beware the brass calf and the sweet music that plays at his arrival! All the glitter isn't God!"
I could see so clearly. Like everything was liquid. His hand disappeared inside his jacket. For a split second, the bottom dropped out of my world, and I waited for him to pull out a badge or a gun. I thought, this is it, and waited to hear, "You're under arrest." But the guy didn't say anything like that, and he didn't pull out a badge. 1 second his hand was buried in his lapel, and the next he was palming a red kidney shape into the light. It wiggled like a gelatin mold. I couldn't see what it was, but Billy Goat seemed to have an inkling.
"I got your glitter swinging."
He mushed the guy in the face, pushing him backwards with a flick of the wrist. As the creep reeled, the red blob went flying from his hand. I watched it in slow motion, rippling through the air like a cherry raindrop. The novelty-colored condom connected squarely with my chest and exploded. My shirt was soaked in something lukewarm. It smelled like ammonia. Splatter blotted my cheek. A drop hit my bottom lip. The door slammed shut, but Billy Goat yanked it back open and yelled,
"Get back here!"
The door slammed again. I stood stunned, trying to come to grips with the reality of being doused in urine. I looked around, stupefied in the narthex, trying to figure out what to do. I dried my face with my sleeve. I reached for the doorknob, but before I could touch it, a crack of cold air split the jamb. A strong gust of wind barged in behind a column of spray. A swarm of pink nails and solid gold bees crawled out of a black fist of alien tree fingers. A bedazzled claw gripped the door sill. Diamond eyes sparkled garnet in the red light from the stroboscopes. The door was pushed open at the behest of a bedizened obsidian wrist extending from the wizard sleeve of a tacky lime green duster, slick as oilskin from the rain. I stopped short and took a step to the side as Velvet T. Walker, mighty Holy Ghost talker, let the door fly open so he could present himself properly and then cross the verge in style.
Land sakes almighty, son.
T kicked the plastic grocery bags from his feet and stamped any residual wet from off his gaiters. He methodically doffed his overcoat, shaking enough of the rain from it to make a nice puddle in front of the exit before handing the duster off to me like I'd been standing there waiting to take it.
Sounds like Teddy Pendergrass at the Cotton Bowl in here.
He marveled as he brushed at the lapels of his burnt orange suit jacket. He looked back at me and turned his nose up.
Why in Sam Hill you all wet? What's that stink? In or out, Sidewinder? Stop clogging up my front door.
Mary's voice approached.
And don't you dare blaspheme in Brother Smith's church. Who's blaspheming, girl? I'm marveling at y'all's numbers.
T arrayed his handkerchief at the milling crowd.
These days I can't pull a room like this without promising real wine and garlic bread for the sacrament. Never mind packing them in weather like this.
Mary waddled up next to me and sassed.
Well, we've been SRO ever since we put up our video.
She wrinkled her nose and looked at me.
Video?
T screwed his face up like he'd stepped on a turd.
Why they all jacked up about that?
Mary pronounced each syllable pedantically.
That is how we're spreading Brother Smith's message.
She threw a thumb at the flock.
And that is how you can tell it's working.
T's tongue ticked against the back of his ivory caps as he stood on his tippy toes to try and make out the front row. He turned back around. He popped his handkerchief and squared his stance.
How many eyes y'all pull into this video?
Mary wound up.
We cracked 1 million views on Friday night and we ain't slowed down yet. How about that?
Her nose twitched.
What's that smell?
She looked anywhere but at me. T's relevance seemed to shrink in an instant, like whatever was on the morning news just before the planes hit on 9/11. His padded shoulders collapsed. His process went limp. T looked ashen. He made a face at Mary like she was an owl swooping down from out of the barn shadows. He put his ringed finger to his chin and the bees scratched in dazed amazement. He squeaked.
1 million views? That's right, E.F. Hutton.
Mary smirked as she smoothed the air out between them with a sweep of her hand.
We're doing just fine without having to stop and listen to your nonsense. Well, hold on now. I didn't come to play. I got serious business to talk over with the man of the hour.
T pointed his chin towards the stage.
What are you up to?
The edge returned to Mary's tone.
I want him to take a trip up to Dodge with me come Easter week. I want his touch with that mixing board for my gig at Lifestock. Pfft, people in hell want ass water, but that doesn't mean they're gonna get it.
Mary patted sweat from her cleavage with a wad of toilet paper. The bees on T's fingers landed on his hips.
Look, don't get sideways with me, girl. I done my bit plenty to help your boy starting out, and now it come back to bite me.
Mary pursed her lips and planted her tiny fist on her hips.
Well, don't get sideways with me, and I won't get sideways with you.
Mary blinked in cold, myopic scrutiny behind her fishbowl lenses.
Go on, show me the snake that bit you or get to stepping.
Squared off, they looked like two clowns playing gunslinger.
Word on the street is y'all chapped the fat man's hide. The Right Reverend is putting screws to anyone associated with y'all until he gets some satisfaction.
She deflated.
How's he leaning on you?
T struggled.
Well, here about 2 hours ago, I got the call from my booker. I've been waiting since the first of the year to hear back from the selection committee about my spot on the bill for this year's Lifestock. I had to take out a second mortgage on my lot back in October just so I could put the $10,000 retainer down to guarantee a place. Well, the Right Reverend sat on my paperwork until the only slot left open was same time as him at high noon on Good Friday. They got me crammed into a school gym clear across town from the fairgrounds.
He threw his hands up.
Every paying Christian at the festival is going to be angling for good seats to the fireworks after the Reverend takes the stage. There ain't a soul that's going to bother losing their parking space just to come watch me do my thing. They just about guaranteed me an empty house. But I can't pull out now or I'll forfeit my deposit.
T sighed.
I need something like this heat y'all come up with. I need the preacher there to help me make some noise. I bet the trip wouldn't affect y'all's paper none.
He snorted.
I mean, if the Reverend's going to punish me for associating, then I figure the least you could do is help me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
He smiled at the clarity of his logic. The bees clacked on the back of a pew.
Way my math works, that'd just about square me and the brother up for all the mentoring I gave him.
His chin rose as if a great weight had been lifted off of his mind. Mary took a step forward and smirked up at T coldly.
How about you figure this, mathematician? Maybe you don't show up for Easter. Get your deposit back, get yourself paid, and save yourself a headache from all the logistics.
T drew back from the suggestion.
Come again?
Mary stepped forward, leading T in a tango of inches, dominating him into reverse.
If you got the last slot in Dodge, that means there's nothing left for Brother Joe if he should take a notion to appear.
Step.
I think it sounds like a perfect opportunity for him to have his coming out in public. Do it up with a real bang.
Step.
If you don't want to share the stage, I say you sell us your set. Give us the whole thing and I guarantee you'll make enough money to get your own band back in order for the summer. You pay off your building, your lot, your cemetery plot, whatever holes you got dug for yourself.
Mary bullied T right into the front doorknob until it split the crack of his ass.
Hey!
He shouted at the goose and leapt to the side.
My set?
T pinched the britches out of his crack.
If I did that, I'd never work another Lifestock again.
Mary stood firm.
There's not going to be another Lifestock if my man up there decides to come with it. You keep on the Reverend's good side if it helps you sleep at night, but you're going to wake up and look out the window and see Brother Joe's changed the rules while you and the old snake were snoring. I got big plans, and this building's about too small for what I got on the horizon for Brother Joe's ministry. This online business is rolling like a snowball down a mountain. It's getting big and it's getting fast. Now you can either learn to ski or get yourself buried in the avalanche, you ding-a-ling.
She pushed his umbrella back at him.
Wait, what? What am I supposed to do?
T whined as he took possession of his umbrella. Mary lifted his duster out of my arms and pushed it back onto him.
Take this ugly thing back to the clown store you bought it from. Plead insanity and ask them if they'll give you your money back for it since you're clergy. If they stop laughing long enough, maybe they'll just charge you all no better tax. But I'm done with you.
She'd had enough. Mary went to warm up the grills. The flock began their mass exit. T stuck around eating a burrito while I went to clean up and count the till. Billy Goat came back from his chase empty-handed. I sent him to tell Seth that T was around.
What's on your mind, T?
Seth spoke with a smile and crossed his arms high on his chest like a genie. T straightened his grape-colored cravat and hemmed.
First off, that's a dang good burrito.
His tongue excavated tortilla cud from between his sparkling teeth.
Not only that, I've been standing here chewing over some other things. I'm just gonna lay it out. The Reverend's cutting the legs out from under us folks that have been showing you boys love. I've got a couple of loans the right Reverend's been holding over my head for years. Those two meathead boys of his finally come at me to collect this afternoon. They got up in my grill, give me a bill, and slam my own door in my face. The interest like to give your boy a heart attack.
T slumped as he spoke his doom.
So much compounding.
He wiped his upper lip with a paper towel.
I just can't afford to get a band up to Dodge for my spot at Lifestock on top of paying him back. But like I was telling your boy,
he pointed at me.
If I don't play, I'm going to have to forfeit a $10,000 deposit I put down from a slot. If I don't get that money, I can't pay back the loan I took out on my lot.
Velvet T took his sunglasses off and pinched the bridge of his nose. He squeezed his eyes tight and mouthed some words of prayer in silence. He inhaled and reseated his glasses. T blew out a breath and said,
Now loans or not, I paid the deposit, so that slot belongs to me fair and square, and I reckon I can present whatever kind of act I want with the time. I'm listening, Seth said. Your girl Mary come at me hard here earlier, but she mentioned you might be interested in buying my slot. What are we talking about?
T hitched his pants up.
Well, I'm gonna need you to reimburse me for that 10 G's up front. I'll call my booker back and tell them to confirm once I got that money in my hand. But the Reverend's gonna know I had something to do with it when you show up in Dodge, and he'll be fit to be tied.
T scowled at the future.
Y'all are asking me to cross a mighty powerful man with leg breakers for sons. I can't thumb my nose at them as easy as y'all can, not with the kind of debt I've got hanging over my head. If y'all really want to poke this old rattlesnake, then I need to get some insurances. I'm gonna have to lay up for a spell no matter what comes. So I got to get some traveling scratch. And it's gonna have to last me and my girl until things cool back down up in here.
He shook his head uncertainly at Seth, and then he let the caveat slip.
Thing is, you'll be playing opposite the Right Reverend's opening ceremony.
T might as well have thrown raw meat at a lion. Seth's face went bright as electricity.
Soup to nuts. What's the damage?
T spoke a figure that sounded like something he'd heard in a movie.
Where's the love?
Seth pushed back.
Hey man, y'all are cool people, but it ain't gonna be too cool standing next to if you upstage the Reverend on the biggest day of his year. I want some distance between me and whatever fire y'all kick up in the man's face. Y'all give me that money, I asked.
T paused as if to give himself one last chance to back out before his voice made the offer too real to take back.
And I'll step aside.
He sighed and his head dropped like he couldn't believe he'd said what he'd said.
We can't do that.
For the first time since Mary had introduced the idea of buying Velvet T's spot, I put my foot down.
We can't afford that, no way. What?
Seth turned on me.
Am I wrong?
I put my hands up and shrugged. Seth raised a finger.
Hold up a second, T, will you?
T didn't care. Seth and I took it out on the patio.
What do you mean we can't afford it? We got that in the bank.
Seth nodded in the direction of the box of cash hidden in his room.
Yeah, and that's all we've got. If we give it to T, then what are we gonna do? Start practicing counting money on our way up to Dodge. Why? Why go up there? We agreed that this wasn't a long-term gig.
I scanned the block for little pictures.
We said we'd pay your rent and get Don happy enough not to cripple you. And we did that. I paid my hospital bills. You got your gear back. We accomplished what we were trying to do.
I hunched my shoulders.
The money we both got right now gives us a good bit of breathing room if we got out soon. You said you wanted to reopen the studio. Now you've got a built-in clientele. I bet you could die a rich man just off recording demo tapes for the flock. I can afford to hang loose. No pressure until something comes my way. We both need to take a step away from the whole...
I twirled my finger like a dreidel and whistled.
We can talk about winding this thing up, but it's not happening any time before Easter. I still owe the Right Reverend for what he did to me. Easter's my chance. That's that.
Seth had spoken. My mind fumfered in a cloud bank. A month and a half until Easter. Every day that we carried on multiplied our chances of getting caught red-handed. The beast was a smoking gun, and Seth wanted to trot it out on a national holiday weekend in front of a festival crowd.
But we can wrap up the whole church business after that?
I was getting a headache.
I tell you what, if you don't puss out on me between now and Good Friday, then I'll do whatever it takes to get your little Ark of the Covenant packed up in storage, all nailed up tight inside its little crate. Alright, Glasses? Happy?
A month and a half. I had to ignore my basic instinct for self-preservation for that long.
I said, are we happy?
Seth poked my carcass. I shook my head.
I'm not happy about anything.
Well, there's news. I threw my hand, motioning for Seth to go back inside. Your Highness?
That's the spirit, Glasses.
He smiled like a pirate and popped me on the chest.
Hey, I haven't steered you wrong yet.
Seth made a beeline for his bedroom. He came downstairs at a trot, zooming with a stack of bills in his hand. He slapped the cash in his open palm. I watched weeks of work walking up to Velvet T.
This here's $10,000.
Seth shook the bills to reopen the conversation.
Now you won't be losing out on your deposit, and you get that loan on your lot off your plate.
He dropped the sheaf into T's thunderstruck hand.
As far as the traveling money goes, we can have that for you upon delivery. You give us a month.
Seth clapped his hands together like a magician.
And I give you my word as a man of God, you'll get the rest of your money before we leave for Dodge.
T's long fingers crept closed over the stack of green like a Venus flytrap. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the bills for a moment.
Ooh-wee!
He finally spoke. T looked back up at Seth and grinned.
I just wish I could see old boy's face when you show up with all this noise and carrying on. You might just be the one to knock him dead on his big day.
Ain't no might about it, partner. Seth's hand shot out. In his mind, the battles were already won. T took his hand and they shook like a couple of used car salesmen.
Y'all just bought yourselves a seat on one heck of a roller coaster, boys. 7 days and anywhere from 50 to 100,000 Christians come in and take over a whole city. They got people camping, wearing costumes. They save up for this thing year round. Dagnabbit, they're looking to spend. The main drag runs smack down the middle of Dodge, and let me tell you, it gets all full up with vendors and booths. There ain't 1 inch you can walk without 10 people yelling, trying to sell you salvation or a poster. You can buy all sorts of snake oil and firecrackers. And they got them some good corn dogs too. Maybe I'll roll up that Friday and watch the fireworks now that I'm a paid civilian and I can afford the gas.
He slapped his upper thigh with a stack of cash. T shifted his weight and put a winsome fist on his hip.
But I reckon the festival's just the warm-up. Things are gonna get good and fast for y'all if you tear it up like I reckon you will.
Oh yeah? Seth grinned.
There's gonna be video distributors, cable station managers, websites, all roaming the streets looking for a new thing. They're in heat. Every one of them is starving to pluck a diamond out of the dog do so they can build their nest egg and retire early on the proceeds. The Reverend's good at bringing talent, no matter what else he is. The industry knows to follow his nose when they're out sniffing for blood.
Seth clapped his hands in giddy satisfaction. So what have you got planned after Easter, big spender? T couldn't keep his eyes off the money for very long. He grinned at the possibilities that were now open to him.
With the cheddar rising like this, I'm heading to New Orleans. I reckon I ain't gonna get a moment of peace or any preaching done in any of the Right Reverend strongholds for a good long spell. Ninth Ward never cottoned to the Reverend's baloney, so he ain't got no truck down there. And you wouldn't believe how many limping souls they still got in the parishes. The place is a ghost town, even 4 years gone since Katrina come through. There's a lot of raw materials lying around for the right preacher to build his name on. There's a lot of human wreckage that could use some Holy Ghost relief. I figure I'll take my girl down, set up in the middle of all that reconstruction. My girl's got an auntie with a guest house down there. We'll rent out my building and live off of that until we start making ends on the rig. I play it right with that Angel of Mercy bit, and I'm like to get myself some crowds like you pull.
T shook his head and snorted. When T left, Seth said, "Now the only question is how are we going to do the thing on the road?" "I have a way. I just wish we didn't have to use it. Wishing and all end up in the same pile. It won't be cheap," I warned. I got the back of Seth's head as he charged onward to his next triumph. He wagged a finger over his shoulder. "I don't want to hear about the prices. Leave the money making to me. You just get it done." And then he disappeared up the stairs. I set up a meet with Chuck for the following day and got Fat to drive me to a neutral rendezvous point. We circled the perimeter of the parking lot at North Park until Fat saw a pale arm hailing us from a thick patch of the mall's shrubbery. Fat drove like an old lady, careening to a halt like a dead elephant in the middle of the road. We lumbered to an idle about 20 feet past Chuck's bush. Chuck ran up and nearly yanked the back door handle off trying to get in. The door wouldn't open and I had to bop Fat on the shoulder to wake him up enough to hit the switch on the automatic door lock.
"Huh? Oh."
Chuck was sweating like a block of tofu when he climbed into the back seat. I turned my head and watched him collecting himself.
"Jesus, if you get that winded, maybe you ought to lay off the drinking. Or cut out the cigarettes and MSG1.
Between panting gasps, Chuck snarled,
"Maybe you should kiss my ass. I parked way the hell on the other side of 75 so I could make sure I wasn't followed."
I sniffed.
"Well, you got in the car without missing a beat, so I assume the coast is clear."
"Yeah." Chuck slouched, visibly jonesing for a cigarette.
"So what do you want?"
I scanned the visible areas of the parking lot. I didn't see any suspicious cars or utility trucks. None that stood out. I cupped my hands over my mouth to conceal my speaking from lip readers.
"I cracked it,"
I declared in a whisper.
"What?"
Chuck scooched forward on the seat.
"I peeled the onion."
I could see the light turn on in Chuck's eyes.
How?
Chuck tilted his head. Insane encryption.
But James left me away inside.
I smiled. I traced out the entire Geschichte of the Sunday morning when Cassandra and I had finally rolled the stone away from the mouth of Visuddhimagga.
What is it?
Chuck spoke from out of a trance. It's a lot. I gave him the eyebrows. Near as I can tell, it's a consolidated library of his entire career, with his private research from the beginning to the end. Everything he was working on that he didn't share with the military. I'll never crack it all. Chuck's face collapsed into palsy, and the width of his attention disintegrated. He slumped trying to comprehend the expanse of everything. It was a lot to process.
So where's the book now?
Chuck came out of his fog. I said, it's safe on a bookshelf. Where it ought to be. The real answer was not part of the deal. Chuck looked up with skunk eyes. He melted onto the seat back in a visible force of will. I watched him come to grips. I waited until he looked ready, and then I said, so now I want to see about getting that box of toroidal dipoles you built for him. We want to try and take this thing on the road. I dropped my hands.
Okay.
Chuck swallowed like he'd hunkered himself up into a hollow trance of calm. He became somewhat somnambulent. I was ready to go back and forth on pricing a little bit, but Chuck seemed too distracted to dicker, somehow uninterested in getting a deal for himself. He was downright hypnotized by the time I made my offer.
Okay,
was his Stepford reply. I was in a hurry, so I didn't question Chuck's pliancy. We concluded our talk and Fat drove over to the used book warehouse. We dropped Chuck off there so he'd only have a couple of blocks to walk back to his car. I got back to the loft and I got busier than a cat trying to bury shit on a concrete drive. I jury-rigged a pulley system in the ceiling of the rat's nest and ran a line down the accessway. I light-fingered a moving cart from private stowage. I threw a tow strap around the relay and called Billy Goat. He did all of the muscle work back at the other end of the pulleys while Fujitsu and I tried to guide the relay over to the cart. Once we got it on there and balanced, Billy Goat started pulling. I shouldered the dolly down the accessway from the back. Fujitsu kept the wheels aligned from the front, usually resorting to bracing his full body weight against the sheetrock walls in the tunnel while pushing on the relay with his feet. Billy Goat didn't break a sweat lifting the relay off of the cart. He wasn't even breathing heavy after carrying it like a six-pack all the way downstairs. I rolled Billy Goat's smoker inside behind closed doors and then removed the cooking grates from the grill. His huge hands made the relay look like a toy as he set it inside of the cooker. If Billy Goat was going to get pinched for anything, it would be the narcos that busted him. If they found the relay in his spot, it would just be anonymous equipment to them, evidence of nothing germane. I said a prayer and closed the lid. Then Billy Goat rolled the grill away.